Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Semino, and with me as always is my co-host, Walt Schwank. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Steven. How's it going?
My friend, it is going very well. We are back on Awesome Truth, and today, Walt, it's the big one. We've been talking about it for a while, and here it is. It's a big one, I think. It's a big one, and then we build it up. I think it's a pretty big deal. I think we haven't talked about something in a while that is this promoted and this, widely accessible and probably widely watched. Is it good? Is it worth discussing in detail? We'll chat about all that. But we've been selling it for a little while. And of course, I'm talking about Hulk Hogan, Real American, the Netflix four-part documentary series on my boy Terry.
Every time we say this is the last time we're going to talk about this guy, then someone puts out something like this, and then we end up having to have to talk about it again. But yeah, it's a big one in a sense that it's Netflix, and people it's at least on my home screen when I open up Netflix. Even like months later, it's been when did it come out? Like 4 to 6 weeks ago.
Great question. Let's see when this came out. This came out in April.
Okay, so we'll
So
call it
two,
6 to 7 weeks.
about 2 months when this drops. Pretty close to 2 months.
We've had several Hogan themed watch alongs since this dropped,
Yes.
so that's how I measure time these days.
It's
And we watched it.
we did, and we had to, and we discussed this on previous episodes. We certainly had a conversation as we had before. Is it worth watching all four parts? Is it that good? Are we learning anything new? I was pretty, I don't want to say adamant, but I thought it would be good to watch all four parts, and I still think it is to discuss it. It is nice to have seen the entire thing, but I will definitely say that there's not a ton here that we didn't already know, unless you count just like general feelings of people involved and some light, like color and context and background. But beyond that, it's not turning over new you know, rocks and uncovering new details and investigatively, tearing holes in the stories of Hulk Hogan and Linda Hogan and everyone involved. It's just sort of outlining a lot of the things. And perhaps even worse, it's giving Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, a microphone and allowing him unfact checked. And I know that's how these things work. So I'm not saying like they should have fact checked him, but it's just letting Hulk talk for 4 episodes, for 4 hours, if not longer. The last episode is long as hell, and just sort of say whatever he wants to say about the events of his life. And so therefore, you just get some stuff that has already been classified in many other avenues, venues as bullshit. But of course, Hulk's saying it. This is the latest definitive stance on it. And so it's going to go down in the record as the reality because Hulk Hogan said it in a Netflix doc and everyone saw it and now he's dead. And so that's just sort of the way it is.
Yeah, it was very. It felt unbalanced to me because we heard from Hulk a lot about things that definitely negatively impacted his legacy and him as a person and even him as a wrestler and a professional. Uh, and we didn't quite hear a whole lot of dissenting opinions or contrary takes beyond Hogan's justification of certain things in certain ways. And um, and again, like, I think what you said is true. Like, of course, we're gonna if he's agreeing to do this, he's not gonna sit there and let them berate him over many horrible things that this guy had done, specifically in the back half. But to humanize a lot of them in the way of letting him kind of offer his POV without anyone saying, "Yeah, but that was still pretty shitty."
Mm-hmm.
Or multiple people saying, "Yeah, that was very shitty."
Or that
Like,
didn't even happen, Like Hulk's been
no,
saying that for 20 years. It is patently untrue, There were definitely a few of those.
yeah. I mean, the only thing that felt balanced is again when we've talked ad nauseum about Hogan and Brett and their dynamic, and they allowed Brett to really lean in on Hogan being a two-faced piece of shit,
Yeah.
as if we
Brett knows
needed.
I feel like Brett knows the assignment at this point, when Brett's called in for these things.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like if you're on a Netflix doc on a production company who may or may not do this shit regularly for wrestling documentaries, I should say, you probably are, oh my God, this is an incredible interview. And Brett is saying all of these unfiltered things about Hulk Hogan. It's like, this is the second time that day Brett probably voiced that opinion about Hulk Hogan to a microphone, a camera, anyone who would listen. So,
Yep.
but yeah, but again, I would say unbalanced. It felt a little bit too much like we're giving Hulk the mic to voice, to paint whatever picture we wanted to, and then we're kind of just going to leave with that lasting image.
Yeah, like you said, the humanizing element, it certainly felt like they wanted to make it, they wanted to remind you as if you need a reminding. Hulk Hogan's a man. He's Terry Bollea. You know, when you prick him, he bleeds. When he cries and is sad and feels regret and et cetera, et cetera. And obviously he's a man. We know this already. That's not information I think most people needed to be reminded of. But there's also they touch on this in the doc. They go into it like it's not like they don't bring it up, but I think it is just so crucial to understanding Hulk Hogan's whole deal is that he lives the gimmick. You know, Keith might even say this. I think Keith, a friend of the show, Keith Elliott Greenberg, is one of the
But it's so
primary voices in this documentary, which is great. I didn't know he was there, and I got so excited. I got like, oh, of course I know that voice. It's our buddy Keith. It's your literal real life friend and my. Well, he's my real life friend at this point, but certainly my podcasting friend. But
great
just
qualification and all that.
I think he said, and maybe it was honestly Bischoff. I can't remember which voice it was, but somebody brought up the idea of living the gimmick, and they said, that's one of the mortal sins in wrestling. It can doom you. It's just you just can't get out of sort of that spiral of thinking you're that guy, and that's just Hulk Hogan to a T. Like Hulk Hogan is the king of living the gimmick. Like his real life is just faded away such a long time ago, and he's just become this guy, like financially, professionally, emotionally, personally, every indication you get from reading about Hulk Hogan, listening to Hulk Hogan, watching Hulk Hogan is that he's just Hulk Hogan. Like there is no more Terry, like and there's just ceased to be a reason for Terry for quite a long time. So to give Hulk a chance to humanize himself when he just spent so much time building up this bullshit narrative and puffing himself up and living in this manufactured reality, I just think there is an incongruousness there or like a weirdness there that I just thought permeated the entire thing. Just knowing what we know about Hulk and being like, I just don't believe at all. I believe he said, but I don't believe at all that he has any ability to separate himself from looking at things through the eyes of Hulk Hogan.
I mean, I think as we're talking about this and as we're reliving yet again our boy, your boy,
Probably for the last
my,
time, I think, unless they make the Hogan movie they've always talked about making, I can't imagine there's another time where we would dive deep into him, right?
I don't want to know what that scenario is. So he's your boy. He's my podcast boy, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's right.
Since that is now a new classification of
Of
closeness.
friends and yeah, and otherwise.
Uh, you know, he, him living the gimmick. I think that's where I don't think he even understands what that means because everything we know to be true about the character Hulk Hogan is shrouded with Terry's stink on it and the like backroom politics. Like I can if I look at Chris Benoit, maybe a terrible example. Let's use a different example.
I was very curious to see where you're going to go with that one.
Or like name a technical wrestler who's middle of the card. That person lives the gimmick. They don't have any power. They don't have any control. They're kind of just like, their character could be who they are, and you're watching their career unfold in a way where it's like, this is like, it's so hard for me to uncouple Terry from Hogan because every creative booking decision made for a better part of a decade with this guy, he had control over. So it's at some point, like I can't even look at this character as a character because the character and everything that happens is influenced by that person who's not the character. And so that's where my head spins a little bit when we talk about like living the gimmick. Like when he says living the gimmick, he's like, yeah, I say brother to people. Like, yeah, sure, then you're living the gimmick. But like the Hogan gimmick and Terry the person are so intertwined to me because the Hogan character is not someone who would politic. The Hogan character is not someone who would pull these power moves that he's done. And it's so opposite of what the 80s Hogan, 90s Hogan was about until he turned heel. And then it
Yeah.
kind of was. But like, even then, it's still, there's still a separation of like, oh, Hollywood Hogan is just devious and dastardly, but like, he's not putting himself at the top of the card because
It's
that's what
a
the character would do.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it is. It's not living the gimmick in the sense of, yeah, he's walking around wearing an American flag as a cape, telling people to take their vitamins all the time. It's living the gimmick in the sense of he is the most, influential and arguably successful wrestler of all time, meaning he was the most, influential, not just, with fans, but behind the scenes. No one wielded power like him, and he came to associate the power wielding, having the book, having control, having all of that stuff became permeated his everything. Everything had to be manufactured, everything had to be controlled, everything he did a reality show, and then even more so melded all that stuff into quote unquote his real life. Like yeah, so but it's a very good distinction, and it does sort of he lived the gimmick of like a wrestler with sway, with unbeatable sway. Like that became
Yeah.
so ingrained and like, well, I won't do it unless it goes the way I want it to go. And that sort of became the prevailing factor in his life for like 5 decades. And when he finally died, he was grabbing onto maybe the final corner of the world where he could exercise that sort of influence. And he'd burned out his goodwill with pretty much everybody else. And so yeah, it was just the final fascinating element of him was his fans were booing him. He couldn't go back to WWE anymore. He turned to another group, and we'll never know how that would have played out ultimately. But it was just a sad coda on like this guy who just needed that adoration and needed that control and just to be seen and loved, and it just permeated his every fiber.
Yeah. It feels like, and I will say to its credit, because I don't want to say this thing was like the worst documentary of all time.
Hmm.
I mean, I think for us, the content can't be ignored in as much as like when I could guess what they were going to cover next, I could have written it myself as if I was like wrestling AI.
Yeah.
Like, make me Hulk Hogan doc. Okay, well, he's a bass player. He just found out, and then he found out, and then he
They
did
broke
self
his
pro. It's like,
leg, and then he fought Iron
yeah.
Sheik. Yeah, then he AWA. Yeah, you could hit the beats pretty cleanly.
Yeah, so the parts that were predictable were very predictable. The parts that were unpredictable weren't unpredictable for good reasons.
Hmm.
And so I, but they did cover, I think, his early career pretty well. They got some good voices to kind of cover that, and they found out a lot of home footage, a lot of like early video and early photos from his time in like Memphis and like some of those Hulk, like Terry Boulder Hulk kind of
Yeah, that was
iterations.
that. A lot of that I'd never seen before. That was really good and unique.
Yeah, and so they did. So the first episode, I would argue, is probably the better one because they did give you this visual experience through this guy's early career, which was not specific, very well documented. We omitted Japan for reasons I'm not quite sure, but maybe it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Um,
it's pretty overstuffed anyway. So
and it's funny juxtaposing that with what you're talking about at the end, where it's like this guy's still trying to act like this is the fucking 80s and he's like the king of pro wrestling. And it's just, yeah, there does become a level of like utter like hopelessness and sadness watching. It's like it's just sad watching this guy go in front of like the Republicans, not necessarily because it may or may not align with him politically. It's because he just wants to get cheered by a bunch of
yeah,
fucking people. I
yeah.
mean, that's my interpretation. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's like super I don't fucking
And
know.
I think
But
he was. I think that's certainly, like you said, that was how he leaned. But I think he also smelled. He was for all of his flaws and warts. He also understood, how to make money and how to sell himself. And I think he recognized a willing audience amongst, Trump supporters. Like, oh, cool, this is a group of people. Maybe it's not maybe it's not the most ardent fandom. Maybe it's not the fandom I'm used to in a lot of ways, but like I can be something here, like their whole thing is nostalgia at the very least. Like we're gonna look at it through like rose-colored glasses, and I'm the king of nostalgia, Like I can harken back to 40 years ago when things were quote unquote better and I was on top of the world, and like it fits like a puzzle piece, I feel like in that vein.
It is kind of funny to see though, like that scene all unfold because it's just such a quagmire, just mixing politics and wrestling. It's like, well, everybody just assumes wrestling fans are just like dumb Southern idiots and would lean a certain way. But then you go to LA and it's like no one's like that. But then it's like it's region specific. Liberal cities are going to lean a certain way, but also like there's an international slant, and then there's people from all over the world who like will travel to a WrestleMania or to the first Raw on Netflix potentially for those things, and like that's a whole different set of leans and things of that nature. So like it's just funny to everyone's like, oh well, I knew it was going to happen, or oh, I didn't know it was going to happen, because the answer is like you could have guessed, but that he would have gotten a reaction like that in the first Netflix appearance. But then again, maybe not, because of all of these weird like stereotypes that have existed for about wrestling and wrestling fans for years or whatnot. It's just funny to see that unfold. It's funny to see him fall on his face
Yes,
while
it
it was
is very funny
unfolding.
to see that.
Because obviously he wouldn't have shown up to that if he thought he was going to get booed out of the fucking building.
Yes,
I would
that is.
assume.
And then I think that's also a fascinating element of the final episode is Hulk's last really labored, tortured attempt to justify, no, see, it was good that I was getting booed because when you get booed, you can turn heel, and when you turn heel, you can go back to the city and make money facing the baby face. And it's like that's yes, that is true. Like if this was 50 years ago and you were a younger man, they would certainly make some money on this. You're a very old man who is unknowingly about to die. Like there's no money here. They brought you out with Jimmy Hart. You could barely walk. You limped out there with Jimmy Hart waving a big old flag. No one saw this coming, and you were flat-footed and scared. And now you're pretending like there's money there. Like it's
Yeah.
a really sad. It would have been nice to get some clarity there from the Hulkster. Not that I expected it, but it would have been interesting if he was able to say like, yeah, I sold out a certain chunk of the audience, and certainly I recognize that like in cities and a lot of like you said, a lot of places around the world, I might never get cheered ever again. Like to maybe recognize the gravity of the choices he's made, even as
Right.
he was going, even if he didn't decommit from the path or apologize, whatever. But like, yeah, he just didn't. He went back on his old wrestling bullshit as opposed to trying to grapple with it like a regular human being. Like maybe this is the outcome of choices I have made in my life. Maybe this is something I did to put myself here, not just circumstances and timing and the business and all this other stuff that is part of it, but a much smaller part compared to his own responsibility, his own choices.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where this guy should be getting booze for a lot of reasons, not just because he showed
Yes.
up to fanfare in front of a bunch of Republicans. There's a lot of reasons to not like this guy, but just like we saw with like Vince coming back right after the Janelle Grant lawsuit, rumors were swirling and stuff, and he was about that first attempt where he came out SmackDown, everybody just cheered the shit out of him.
Yep.
It's like there are instances where this is a vacuum, and people will just want to just him to throw the headband and flex and put the cup the fucking hand over his ear and give the thumbs up. Like people probably do want to see that still. So it's in any
Yeah.
rate, but in
Wrestling
this
is
case,
wrestling is very weird though. And that's one thing I will say. I don't think the doc not I don't, this is not something the doc needs to get into, but it would have been interesting to try and sort of maybe dissect that a little more, the complexity of all that. Like again, not a necessity for this kind of thing. Like already got a lot in there, and they clearly were more focused on telling the Hulk Hogan story as opposed to the story of this. But I just think, yeah, the second, third, fourth chances that wrestling will buy you, and him being again arguably the most famous and successful wrestler of all time, certainly the most in expanding its horizons and making it what it is today, he was the biggest in that. Just the finality what became the finality of him getting that reception in LA, it does feel very appropriate for what you're describing, which is like this guy came back so many times and had so many chances, and some of them weren't deserved, and some of them he quote unquote earned. But the fact that that's how he went out is very fitting, given everything. That even wrestling fans, we're like we're good, we're all set. Like we don't need this anymore. We don't want this anymore. This is sad. This is bad. Like we would rather we please get this away from us right now.
As he's shelling like a new beer
Yeah,
company,
exactly.
he's throwing his name
Yeah,
on. As he's pushing a new fighting promotion. Him and Bischoff supposed to start some like amateur wrestling bullshit. Like,
yeah,
it's like, all right, dude, enough's
yeah.
enough.
Forever selling. Like it is indicative of the inability. Like that's another element that under the surface never really brought above the fact that so many few of these guys and girls, mostly guys, cannot ever step away. Like they just it just inevitably gets sadder and sadder, and they look older and more close to death, and it's not what people want to see from there. Most wrestling fans want to see vibrant young people doing athletic feats and telling stories and being engaging and interesting. Like they don't want to see, even the most nostalgia hungry don't want to see some old man who could barely walk limping down to the ring to sell some shit to them. Like it's just that is not what people want to see, and I think Hulk just came to embody that very much so.
Yeah, and I mean, that whole last episode was just a lot of stuff I've not forgotten about necessarily, but it's just like another thing, and there's another thing he's doing. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how much fucking shit did this guy do after, even
Yeah.
after like the Gawker incident, and
Yeah, we
after,
sort of speed run through the final 10 whatever so years, and it is a very busy series of years
yeah,
for old Hulk Hogan.
he gets married again. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know that happened.
I don't think I
Ugh.
even knew that. That was interesting. And Brooke obviously chooses not to participate, which is fascinating because Brooke, they make it very clear how much they all love the attention and the fame of the VH1 show. So the fact that Brooke chose not to do this is interesting, given the other Linda and Nick are all over it. So there's a lot of layers to it, I'm sure.
I forgot Nick was out of jail.
Yeah, Nick, I was telling my wife that I was saying, yeah, Nick's here, and yeah, there he is. He's being still carrying water for his father. Not that obviously it's very sad when your father passes away, but their relationship just seems very interesting and unique. Like just not what I'd say the typical father son relationship in a lot of ways. Still just like sort of being, but so many people in Hulk's orbit, Jimmy Hart and Beefer and a lot of his, wrestling buddies and his son, like everyone just becomes a sycophant and a lackey, like he ate up all the oxygen in the room and everyone was just falling behind him for scraps. And so in the 80s, everyone, Brett and a bunch of other people admitted that was just sort of the way it works. But to see it in 2020s, to see a bunch of people still following him around for those scraps, when how meager those scraps have gotten to that point, is pretty depressing thing to see.
Yeah, I mean the Jimmy Hart experience circa 2026. It's like it's not the happiest of sights. It is that's sad for many different but bad reasons.
I put in my
Uh,
notes where one of the final things we see in episode 4 is Jimmy Hart walking around backstage, for the goodbye Hulk Raw. And I wrote my notes like Jimmy Hart realizing this is the last time he'll ever be backstage
yeah,
at the show. His meal ticket is gone, and no one wants Jimmy Hart around. Trust me, he's there for Hulk. And the second it's over, they're like, don't invite Jimmy back ever again. Like we're good there, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Maybe if was he with Honky Tonk Man?
Yeah, he was with the Hart Foundation. He might be with Honky Tonk Man too. Yeah. You think for
Whatever one of
Do
those
you think when
guys.
Honky Tonk passes, they're gonna do a Honky Tonk show, and Jimmy can come back for that?
Probably not, but that would be the only reason to do it. Bring Jimmy Hart back. But I'm glad we were talking. We did. You mentioned the other interviews, Linda and Nick Hogan. Specifically, Linda. I have to get something off my chest here.
Mhm.
I, you know, I don't know why I'm surprised by this, but I'm extremely surprised that this woman came off as very. I mean, she came off trashy. But I shouldn't be surprised because she was just like some woman from Tampa that fell in love with a guy to end up becoming the biggest wrestler in the world. and I guess like she was on reality TV, but I don't know why I assumed that she was like had more press reps or could speak a little bit more eloquently. She came off as like kind of like trashy, and I'm just like I don't know why that was so surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, did you not watch Hogan Knows Best? Were you not a Hogan, an HKB guy growing up?
I wasn't Hogan Knows Best watcher, but like apparently I don't remember anything about it because they a lot of this illuminated some stuff for me, which was fun. The documentary when they covered the Hogan Knows Best parts of it,
Hmm.
but like, yeah, I thought Linda was a little bit more put together than this. She just came off kind of like low class, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I
There's nothing to really say beyond. I was really surprised by.
I agree with that for the most part. She definitely is who she is, and seemed to just, be made perhaps reveling in it more now than she might have been before. Who knows what's up with her? She seems like that whole family seems wild, and part of it is, is so I guess the inevitability of being again in the orbit in the close family members of a guy like Hogan who just soared so high and then has spent 30 years trying to get back there and again was sort of back there and had runs that were close to that and had moments where he sort of could get back there but really and the lifestyle they'd sort of built for themselves and then are forced to attempt to maintain despite again never really having access to that kind of fame and probably fortune ever again. It just seems like a lot. Like I feel like I have no sympathy for them really at all, but just objectively I can just see, you're born into these glory days and then you spend decades chasing them and they're never coming back. And, for Hulk to go through that is weird and bad enough. But then his whole family, that's just to know those heights are going to be forever out of reach. I bet that does a number on you. And I bet it just, if you, if, perhaps if you need to dip back down into the lower levels and become king or queen of the gutter people, perhaps that is the best path one can take at that point.
I mean, clearly she had a chip on her shoulder for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's just funny to just to think about Hogan Knows Best in general because that was such an like I've said this before, recorded and unrecorded. It's that was such a not pivotal, but it was such a like early like a reality show
Hmm.
like it was like the Osbournes, and then Hogan Knows Best was shortly thereafter, and then there became like a slew of many iterations and derivatives of it. And so there's something to be said about the fact that this guy was like one of the one of the first of this kind of like a TV genre that became ultra popular, a celebrity family follow docs.
Hmm.
Like the Kardashians are effectively this show for
Yeah.
for for all intents and purposes, and we know how big that is. So it's just funny that like I think we forget that too with that show in the context of how important that was to like the landscape of TV in some ways, and also it's just fun just like hearing some of those stories about how it affected the family. Like we kind of all always knew it affected the family negatively,
Hmm.
like because Nick gets into his legal trouble shortly thereafter, their marriage breaks apart afterwards. It would be it's a lazy answer to say, oh well, it's because they did a reality TV show and then their family just like blew up because they couldn't withstand the limelight. It's just like, yeah, but this guy was like was one of the biggest celebrities in the world for a long time. So like, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but just hearing the stories about how they manipulated like Nick and made portrayed him a certain way, and how the according to Hogan, the scenes that they're unfolding in the show were actual arguments that they actually had, and they felt really it just made things worse and stuff. Like actually hearing that for the first time, I thought was interesting, and probably
Yeah.
the only big takeaway for me watching this thing.
I agree. And like if there is any sympathy to have for the Hogans, I think it maybe would be regarding that, But obviously the reason they get on that show is because they're Hulk and Linda, as you know, and then everybody they're fame obsessed and their money. They need money. And so
Right.
like they didn't do it for altruistic reasons or anything like that. But it's
I don't
the
feel bad for them, for the record.
but
I don't
no, of
feel
course
bad for these
not.
people.
No,
It just
nor should you. That would be insane. But it is what like they didn't know when the infrastructure was not in place yet of like what this was. Like I think you're noting, like now it's like, oh,
yes,
the Kardashians do it and they know exactly how to launch careers and monetize it and get brand partnerships and all this other shit that just becomes this empire. And like the Hogans, it was like, do a reality show, okay. And then like you said, they're just filling time doing dumb shit. Like they don't even know what they're doing. Like they're figuring it out as they go. So they don't get the opportunity to make the money off it they probably would have 10 years later and to maybe know what they're getting into a little more and come out of it maybe a little less unscathed because they're like, oh, this thing's a fucking catastrophe unless you own it and you do it exactly right, which now people seem to be much more equipped to at least participate in this thing, whereas the Hogans are just jumping in the deep end and then realizing they can't really swim. And so again, I don't really care about it too much, but it is. You're right. You're right. Like they were trendsetters, and a lot of people have made a lot of money because they figured out a lot of what not to do because of the Hogan show. Like they said, well, we're not going to do that because that fucked the Hogans up. So let's do something better, and then they did, and it worked out great for them comparatively. So
yay, reality TV
yeah, so
stars.
great, so good. You have
Yeah,
the kids are happy. Everyone's having a nice time.
I was
No
gonna
good.
say the whole thing was a vehicle for Brooke's career, and then she never
Yeah.
ended up becoming that famous. So all this was kind of like it was like the monkey paw effect, effectively.
My wife was saying she watched Hogan Knows Best a lot when she was growing up. She's a few years younger than us. And she was like, Brooke Hogan was the trash queen. Like we loved Brooke Hogan so much. And we wanted to be like her. And like it was like maybe 75% ironic, but she's like 20. We also liked Brooke a lot and thought she was funny and all that. So it like could have worked, I guess. It just didn't at all. And probably because and they obviously make fun of they show a couple clips of Brooke trying to sing and sounding bad. And so if that's what her voice really does sound like, it's not surprising, I guess, that she would never make the big time. But
Maybe she should have been a wrestler. I don't know.
yeah, honestly, that I'm bad again 10 years later, wouldn't be surprised. But well, that's as let's say until we are proven wrong, and I pray we are not. Let's say this is the final definitive popular word on Hulk Hogan, his family, his life, etc. Is this fitting? Like, is it sort of appropriate? That's a bit of a leading question, but isn't it kind of appropriate that we're going out with some bullshit? Like, wouldn't it be weirder, I guess, to go out with some objectively reported truth on Hulk Hogan, and instead we go out with Hulk peddling his own narrative one more time?
Couldn't have imagined a better last stock. In that, given that, I would say it was apropos. But
Yeah, it's bloated, popular, mass produced to a certain extent, aimed at, a large audience, claiming to sort of be some sort of tell all, but then in reality just being a bunch of talking heads sharing their own versions of stories. Like, yeah, it's very fitting for a wrestler who just cooked up so much shit over the course of his, decades on this earth, I think, that he gets one last time to peddle those wares and humanize himself at the very least. Send himself out, looking like just a little guy. I'm just a little guy, and I have feelings too, which is, it's. I guess that's what I think. There's a comment in there, like someone asked Bischoff, can wrestlers ever just go out, nice and calm and peaceful? And he says, it doesn't look like it. And so I think you can, but so many choose to hold on to scraps and debase themselves and take whatever they can get and fight for every final bit of fame. And to some extent I understand it, but to a larger extent I'm like, you all have done some of this to yourselves. You like cannot, you don't want to go out gracefully. You want to go out holding on to those final little peanuts of respectability until they're just gone.
obviously, this. I don't think he recorded this with the intent of it being effectively an obituary,
Mm-hmm.
like an obit look back, where he's commenting up until the day he dies on things that happened throughout his life. Um, so I'm curious what the original intent of this was from his perspective, like to get all this out and to tell his side of every story he's ever told and then some. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's fitting that this was the last thing he did, and it is very consistent with the previous 70 years of things he did, which was nonsense.
But he was big and he was important, and we've had that rammed down our throats since we've been alive. And like, this is hopefully the last time that we need to be told about Hulk Hogan's influence and involvement in wrestling. Like, it's he made things worse in a lot of ways, and he had a oversized presence, and I'm tired of hearing about all of it. And it may be more that I'm tired of hearing about the screw job, like I don't really ever want to do a Hogan match ever again. We've done the dumbest, we've done the best. Like, I think we should, I would love if we're able to put my boy Terry to bed on Awesome Truth as well as in popular culture and move on to other stories that are also interesting and valuable.
Yes, for the
I'm
love of
not
God,
saying I'm not
please.
saying we need to ban Terry from the show. I would never say that because tangentially he will never die. But I hope you and I can, find a better path forward for ourselves.
Yeah, at least for, I don't know, the next 3 to 6 months
I was gonna say until
before the
until the end
next
of the
thing
calendar.
comes.
Let's make it through the calendar year, and then we'll see what the world brings us. I mean, we are whatever content exists, we are forced to engage with that content to a certain extent. So our
Yeah.
hands are ultimately tied to some, in some way, but hopefully not tied that badly.
What I'll say is, like, I don't, because he's no longer alive. Half the fun of watching these things is watching him dance around the truth or dance around his version of the truth, or so at the very least we'll never get one of those. Now if they came out with like an Ultimate Warrior style like documentary, now that now that he's not alive, that could be kind of fun, but
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna to give him the warrior treatment. So
No, they're not going to lionize him, but they're going to put him to bed and say, "What a great, thanks for all the money, Hulk. We'll still sell some, red and yellow shirts every now and then."
sure,
So,
maybe not in LA.
no, that's right. Well, if you want to hear more about Hulk Hogan, you can find so much about him in our archives, awesometruth.libsyn.com. So many Terry episodes, more than we would like to discuss or admit. You can also get episodes old and new everywhere podcasts are delivered, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those places. Subscribe to Awesome Truth. We are everywhere. Walt, good to talk about Terry with you. Hopefully this is the end of his reign over our hearts and minds, and we can speak rarely of him again. We can consume new contents, fresh ideas, fresh stories.
At least hoping that he doesn't have a hold on our content calendar anymore.
But
So
if they make a Chris Hemsworth movie, I'll fucking go see it. Who am I kidding?
yeah, probably the same.
Well, thank you all so much for listening, and remember, the truth will set you free.